I stand in the middle of my parents' living room on Christmas Eve, my voice echoing off the walls as family members stare at me in stunned silence. Holiday music still plays softly in the background, a cheerful counterpoint to what I'm about to do. Several of you have asked why I came alone tonight. I begin, my voice steadier than I expected. Why my 7-year-old son Adrian isn't here celebrating Christmas with his family. I see my mother Nancy's face flush red. She steps forward, her perfectly manicured hand reaching toward me. Samantha, this isn't the time. Oh, I think this is exactly the time. I continue, my voice rising slightly. Because you see, there wasn't really a ban on children at this party. There was a ban on one child, my son, who apparently isn't good enough for this family's Christmas celebration. The room erupts in murmurs. I see shocked faces, disapproving looks directed at my parents, and confused children watching the adult drama unfold. But that's not even the whole story, I laugh. But there's no humor in it. While my son isn't good enough to attend Christmas, I'm apparently good enough to send my parents $1,000 every month. And my sister Abigail here sends $500. Abigail's husband Brian's head snaps up. Wait, what? What $500? You're sending money from where? Our account barely covers the bills as it is. And just like that, the carefully constructed facade my family had built began to crumble before my eyes. How did I get here? How did I become this person standing in her parents' living room on Christmas Eve, publicly exposing their manipulation and lies? It all started 8 months ago, when death came knocking at my door. The day everything changed. I never thought I'd be a widow at 34, but here I am, Samantha Miller, sitting at my kitchen table at 7 a.m., trying to get my 7-year-old son ready for school while fighting back tears. It's been 8 months since the accident at the construction site took David from us, but sometimes it feels like yesterday. Adrian pushes his cereal around the bowl, his eyes downcast. Mom, do you think Dad can see my art show next week? He asks quietly. My heart fractures all over again. Adrian has been processing his grief through art, drawing portrait after portrait of his father. His art teacher says he has remarkable talent for his age. I believe he can, sweetheart. I manage, my voice catching. And he'd be so proud. The truth is, I'm barely holding it together. The first few months after David's death were a blur of paperwork, tears, and sleepless nights. I honestly don't know how I would have made it through without Rose and Robert Miller, my in-laws. Flashback, meeting David. I met David Miller at a community art festival 6 years earlier. I was working at the marketing booth for my agency, and he stopped by not to look at our promotional materials, but to comment on the design layout. The negative space is doing all the work here, he said, smiling. It's clever. David was a construction project manager, but he'd studied architecture in college and had an artist's eye for detail. That's where Adrian gets it from. David could look at a building and see not just its structure, but its story. My parents were both teachers, he told me on our third date. Dad taught physics, Mom was in nursing. They believed education and creativity went hand in hand. I would come to understand just how deeply those values had shaped him, and the family he came from. The true family, Rose and Robert have been absolute angels, picking Adrian up from school every day so I can focus on work. Robert, a retired physics professor, has endless patience for Adrian's questions about how things work, and Rose, still working part-time as a nurse, always makes sure we both eat properly when grief steals my appetite. I stopped by their place yesterday afternoon to get Adrian, and once again, Rose tried to give me money. Rose, really, I can't take this, I said, pushing back the envelope she tried to slip into my purse. Samantha, sweetie, we want to help, she insisted, her kind eyes meeting mine. We know the insurance company paid well, but your family, let us do this. She's right about the insurance. The company paid out $300,000 after David's death. Between that and my job as an account director at an advertising agency, we're doing okay financially. But it's not about the money with Rose and Robert. It's about the love they show us every day. Last week, I arrived to find Robert helping Adrian build a small easel for his artwork. The boy's got talent, Robert whispered to me, just like his father had. It needs nurturing. If only my own parents were half as supportive. My own family. The early signs. Mom and dad have always made it clear that my older sister, Abigail, was their golden child, and now they extend that same favoritism to her kids over Adrian. Growing up in the Clark household meant understanding your place in the hierarchy early. My father, Walter, built his construction company from the ground up, and he expected the same drive and ambition from his daughters. My mother, Nancy, a former high school teacher, was obsessed with appearances and social standing. Abigail fulfilled their expectations perfectly: beauty queen, straight A student, married to a good provider. I was always the disappointment, more interested in creative pursuits than status symbols. Last weekend was typical. Adrian was excited to see his grandparents, but within 20 minutes, Mom was complaining about his drawings. Why does he waste so much time on these? Mom sighed, barely glancing at Adrian's latest portrait of his father. Abigail's children are already taking coding classes online. That's a real skill for the future. Dad nodded in agreement, reaching for his laptop. Here, Adrian, why don't you play some educational games instead? Look, I downloaded some new ones. But Adrian didn't want games. He wanted to connect, to express himself, to be seen. Meanwhile, Abigail's three children sat in the corner, completely absorbed in their phones, barely acknowledging anyone's presence, and my parents held this up as the ideal behavior. I've learned to bite my tongue. Growing up as the less favored child, I got used to these comparisons long ago. The first request. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday dinner at my parents' house. The warning signs were there from the moment I walked in. Mom had made my favorite lasagna, which she usually only does when she wants something. Dad was unusually chatty, asking about work, about Adrian, about everything really. They were building up to something. I just didn't know what. Dad brought out an old family photo album, something he never does. Remember these family vacations? He asked, pointing to pictures from when Abigail and I were children. Family has to stick together, support each other. That's what we taught you girls. Then Mom said carefully, cutting her lasagna into perfect squares, we've been meaning to ask you something. How much was David's life insurance payout? The question hit me like a slap in the face. I nearly choked on my water, completely blindsided by such a direct inquiry about something so personal. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe I was just tired of keeping secrets from my parents, but I answered honestly. $300,000, I said quietly. The fork in Mom's hand clattered against her plate. Dad's head snapped up so fast I thought he might hurt himself. They stared at me like I just announced I'd won the lottery. Well, Mom said, putting down her fork deliberately. What are you planning to do with all that money? I felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I've invested it, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. It's for Adrian's future, his college education, maybe help him buy an apartment when he's older. David and I always talked about, but that's years away, Dad interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. You should be thinking about the present, Samantha, about your family. The way he said family made it clear he wasn't talking about Adrian. The trap is set. A week later, Mom called. We're having a family dinner on Sunday, she announced, her voice warm as if nothing had happened. Abigail and the kids will be there too. You have to come, sweetie. Something about her tone made me uneasy, but I agreed. When I arrived that Sunday, Abigail was already there with her three kids, all of them glued to their phones as usual. As we sat down to eat, she started talking about rising prices, bills piling up, and how hard it was to make ends meet these days. Abigail, a real estate agent, was dressed impeccably as always. Designer watch, perfect manicure, clothes that screamed successful professional. Yet here she was, sighing about financial struggles. Everything is just so expensive now, she said, passing the potatoes. Your father and I barely have enough for a normal life anymore, Mom added, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, talking about rising grocery prices and utility bills. I glanced around their well-furnished home, noting the new kitchen appliances that hadn't been there a month ago. Abigail cleared her throat and sat up straighter. I've been thinking, she announced, looking around the table, Samantha and I should help Mom and Dad financially. I'll send them $500 every month. I wish I could do more, but you know how it is. Brian's the only one working consistently and with three kids. She trailed off, letting that sink in before turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But you, Samantha, you should send them $1,000 monthly. Excuse me? I nearly choked on my water. Well, it makes sense. Abigail pressed on. You earn really well at your job, and you only have one child to support. Plus, with your situation, you have other income now. My blood boiled at her careful avoidance of mentioning David's death directly. I wanted to scream that I was a widow, that I didn't have a husband's income to rely on anymore, that the other income she was referring to was meant for my son's future. But Mom was already clapping her hands in delight, and Dad was beaming like it was Christmas morning. Oh, girls, Mom exclaimed. You don't know what this means to us. I sat there, torn between anger and disbelief, watching my family's expectant faces. The words of refusal died in my throat. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn their approval, and here they were, putting a price tag on it. Fine, I heard myself say. I'll do it. The price of approval. The first transfer hurt the most. $1,000 gone with a few clicks. I told myself it was worth it if it meant more family support with Adrian, but that fantasy quickly unraveled. Mom, could you pick Adrian up from school today? Rose has a doctor's appointment, and I have a late client meeting. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry, Mom's voice crackled through the phone. I've got such a headache today. You know how my migraines get. This became a pattern. Every time I needed help with Adrian, there was an excuse. Mom was too busy. She was tired. She had errands to run. Her back was acting up. Meanwhile, the $1,000 left my account like clockwork every month. At night, I would stare at David's photograph on my nightstand. What would you do? I'd whisper to his image. David had always seen through my parents' behavior, gently encouraging me to set boundaries. But he never pushed me to cut ties completely, understanding how desperately I wanted my parents' love. One particularly frustrating Thursday, after Mom claimed she couldn't watch Adrian because she might be coming down with something, I called Rose in desperation. Of course we'll pick him up, Rose said without hesitation. Robert's already heading to the school. He loves their little chats on the drive home. Adrian's been telling him all about their art project. I hung up the phone and sat at my desk, fighting back tears. $1,000 a month bought me nothing but excuses from my own mother, while my mother-in-law dropped everything to help without asking for a penny. The Christmas betrayal. December crept up on us that year. We'd always spent Christmas at my parents' house. It was tradition. The whole family gathered there, exchanging gifts, sharing meals, making memories. The call came exactly a week before Christmas. I was helping Adrian with his homework when my phone lit up with Mom's number. Samantha, honey, she started, using that syrupy sweet tone that always preceded bad news. About Christmas Eve, we've decided to do something different this year. We're having an adults-only party. No children allowed. The pencil I was holding snapped in my hand. What? It's just that we want to do something more sophisticated this year, Mom continued as if she was discussing something as trivial as changing dinner plans. You know, wine, adult conversation. But it's Christmas, I protested, moving away so Adrian couldn't hear. What am I supposed to do with Adrian? Oh, that's easy, she replied, her voice light and dismissive. You can leave him with Rose and Robert. They'd love to have him, I'm sure. You can come by around 7 o'clock. After hanging up, I stared at Adrian, who was still working on his math problems, completely unaware that his grandmother had just uninvited him from Christmas. My heart ached watching him concentrate, his tongue sticking out just like David's used to. I looked at the latest drawing he'd done, a family portrait showing me, himself, Rose, and Robert with a semi-transparent David watching over us all. His art teacher had called it remarkably sophisticated emotional expression for his age. I spent the next week debating what to do. The thought of celebrating without Adrian felt wrong, but skipping the family Christmas entirely seemed too dramatic. Finally, I came up with a compromise. I'd leave Adrian with Rose and Robert for a few hours, make an appearance at my parents' house to exchange gifts and greetings, then head back to celebrate properly with my in-laws and son. As Christmas Eve approached, I found myself remembering all the times my parents had made me feel less than. All the comparisons to Abigail, all the times my achievements were dismissed while hers were celebrated. They'll never change, David had told me once, after my parents had forgotten my birthday while throwing an elaborate party for Abigail's promotion. The question is, how long will you keep expecting them to? The truth revealed, on Christmas Eve, I pulled up to my parents' house alone, a bag of carefully wrapped presents in hand. Adrian had insisted I take his latest drawing as a gift for the family. It's everybody together, he'd explained. So they remember we're all connected. The driveway was full of cars, more than usual for our family gatherings. Walking up to the front door, I could hear laughter and Christmas music spilling out into the cold December air. I opened the door, and the world seemed to tilt sideways. The house was packed with relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, but that wasn't what stopped me in my tracks. There, running through the living room with paper crowns on their heads, were Abigail's 3 kids. And near the Christmas tree, I spotted my cousin Linda's children helping themselves to cookies. More kids appeared in my line of sight, my cousin Mark's twins, my cousin Susan's teenager. The room suddenly felt too hot, too tight. I stood in the doorway, the gift bag hanging limply from my hand, as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't an adults-only party at all. It was a party where only my son wasn't welcome. My Aunt Marie was the first to spot me. "Samantha, sweetheart," she rushed over to hug me, then looked around expectantly. "Where's little Adrian? Don't tell me he's sick on Christmas Eve." Before I could answer, my cousin Peter chimed in. "Yeah, where's our favorite little artist? Jake's been wanting to show him his new art supplies." More relatives gathered around, all asking the same question. Where was Adrian? Why had I come alone? Each inquiry felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't form words, couldn't explain what I didn't understand myself. Through the crowd, I spotted my mother in the kitchen, arranging cookies on a Christmas-themed platter as if everything was perfectly normal, as if she hadn't just excluded her only grandson from a family celebration. And that's when something inside me snapped. Back to the present, as I stand in my parents' living room, publicly exposing their manipulation, I watch as the truth ripples through the gathering. Abigail's husband Brian is demanding answers about money they don't have. My Aunt Caroline is calling my parents scammers. Uncle Steve is gathering his coat, saying he can't stay another minute in this house. I raise my hand, silencing the ongoing arguments around me. I have something else to say. The room falls quiet again, all eyes returning to me. My parents stand frozen by the Christmas tree, their faces ashen. From this moment on, I say, my voice steady and clear, I will no longer be sending you any money, and I won't be maintaining any relationship with you or Abigail. I'm done. Without waiting for a response, I turn and walk out, leaving the bag of gifts by the door. The sound of the door closing behind me feels final, like the ending of a chapter that should have finished long ago. Sitting in my car, I pull out my phone and open my banking app. With a few quick taps, I cancel the monthly transfer to my mother's account. It feels like cutting off a chain I've been dragging behind me for months. A true Christmas. The drive to Rose and Robert's house seems to take both forever and no time at all. When I pull into their driveway, I can see Adrian through the window helping Rose decorate Christmas cookies. The sight of him happy and loved brings tears to my eyes. We spend the rest of Christmas with Rose and Robert, decorating cookies, singing carols, and watching Adrian's eyes light up as he helps Robert arrange the nativity scene. This, I realize, is what family should feel like. "Thank you," I whisper to Rose as we watch Adrian carefully hang ornaments on their tree. "For being his real grandparents." Rose squeezes my hand. "David was our son," she says simply. "You and Adrian are our family." That's all there is to it. The next morning, while Adrian is still asleep surrounded by the presents Santa had brought, my phone rings. It's Aunt Caroline. "You might want to hear how things ended last night," she says without preamble. She describes how the relatives had left en masse, not even bothering to say goodbye to my parents. Some had apparently made very loud comments about manipulative behavior and family shame as they walked out. "And Brian?" I asked quietly. "Oh, honey, he was livid. Packed up the kids right there and then told Abigail he needed time to think about their marriage. Said he was taking the children to his parents' house for Christmas." Abigail was crying. Your parents were trying to damage control, but it was too late. She takes a deep breath. I want you to know, Samantha, we're all on your side. What they did to you and Adrian, it's unforgivable. After hanging up, I sit on my bed processing everything. My phone starts buzzing with notifications. Text messages from mom, dad, and Abigail. They all say variations of the same thing. We're sorry. We were wrong. Please talk to us. We can explain. I read each message once, then archive them without responding. Epilogue. 6 months later, spring has given way to summer, and Adrian and I have established new rhythms to our life. The $1,000 I'd been sending to my parents now goes into Adrian's college fund instead. He's thriving in the art classes Rose and Robert enrolled him in as a birthday gift. My parents and Abigail continue to reach out periodically. Each time, I read their messages, then archive them without response. The apologies have evolved into guilt trips, then anger, then back to desperate pleas. But their words no longer have power over me. On Adrian's 8th birthday, we host a party in our backyard. Rose and Robert are there, of course, along with Aunt Caroline and Uncle Mike, and several of Adrian's school friends. As I watch my son laughing, surrounded by people who genuinely love him for who he is, I feel David's presence stronger than I have since he died. You would be proud, I whisper, looking up at the sky. We found our real family. Later that evening, as Adrian shows Rose his newest paintings, my phone rings. It's my mother, calling for the third time this week. This time, instead of letting it go to voicemail, I answer. Samantha? You actually picked up. She sounds surprised and hopeful. Yes, I say simply. What do you want, Mom? We miss you both so much. Her voice cracks. Please, can we just start over? We've learned our lesson. I look across the room at Adrian, happily explaining his artwork to Robert, who listens with genuine interest and admiration. No, Mom, I say quietly. Some lessons come too late. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Adrian and I are happy now. We have people in our lives who love us unconditionally. That's something you never understood. I hang up before she can respond, feeling not sadness but peace. David was right. They would never change. What I finally had. To every daughter who was made to pay for the privilege of being family, your worth isn't measured in dollars given or debts forgiven. My voice echoed through the packed conference room as I looked out at the sea of faces women who, like me, had been family ATMs for far too long. $342,765.40. The number that changed everything. As I stood at the podium, addressing these women who had become my unexpected tribe, I felt the weight of my mother's presence in the back row. She'd slipped in quietly, probably hoping I wouldn't notice. But I always notice her now on my terms, not hers. How did I get here? How did the dutiful daughter become the woman who documented her family's financial abuse and turned it into a movement? The answer is simple. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. Flashback the coffee shop. 3 months earlier, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, reviewing quarterly projections for my consulting business, when my phone lit up with my mother's name. I nearly declined the call, an instinct born from years of such conversations ending with my bank account lighter and my heart heavier. But old habits die hard. Margaret, honey, we just gave Thomas the money for his house down payment. $100,000. Isn't that wonderful? The smugness in her voice was unmistakable. My mother, Vivian Bennett, 74 years old and somehow still the queen bee of her church community, had perfected the art of disguising boasts as casual conversation. My father, Howard, a retired mid-level banker who'd blown through his retirement fund years ago, was undoubtedly beaming beside her. I gripped my coffee mug tighter, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. That's great, Mom. Really great. I know you probably wish you could have helped him too, sweetie, but with your lifestyle choices, we understood you needed to focus on yourself. My lifestyle choices. Like building a 7-figure financial consulting business from nothing. Like covering their mortgage for 3 years when Dad's bank downsized and he refused to take lesser positions at his age. Like funding their 35th anniversary cruise last summer when they couldn't possibly afford it. My lifestyle choices, right? I said, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. But she wasn't listening. She never did. Oh, and Thomas has already picked out the most darling colonial in Highland Park, 4 bedrooms, perfect for when he finally settles down with a nice girl. You remember Sarah from church? Her daughter just moved back to town. I let her ramble while opening my laptop. Right on schedule, a notification popped up from my banking app. They tried accessing the joint account I'd quietly closed last month. 3 attempted logins in the past hour. Mom, I cut in. I should go. Client meeting. At 52, I still felt the need to explain myself to her. Always working, aren't you, Margaret? Men don't find that very. Bye, Mom. Give my love to Dad. I ended the call and immediately texted Carol. It's happening. They just found out. Carol replied instantly. Holy shit. You actually did it. You okay? Was I okay? I stared at my reflection in the coffee shop window. 52 years old, divorced, self-made, and finally done being the family ATM. Flashback early years. I wasn't always the family bank. There was a time when I was just Margaret, the eldest Bennett child, the one who did everything right. I put myself through college working 2 jobs because Dad said it would build character. Meanwhile, Thomas got a full ride of their money, not a scholarship. Your brother is different, Mom would say. He needs more support. Different how? Because he was their son? Because he charmed them with his stories while I worked silently in the background? Or because they saw in him the future they wanted, a conventional, predictable, safe? I remember the day I got my first big client, 10 years after my divorce from David, who'd left me with his gambling debts. I'd called my parents, bursting with pride. Dad had asked how much I was making, then immediately mentioned Thomas needed a new car. The pattern was established early. Flashback the revelation. My phone rang again after that coffee shop call. Thomas. I answered this time curious. Margaret. What the hell? He was breathing hard. Mom's freaking out. The account's empty. Not empty, I corrected. Closed. There's a difference. But, but I need that money. The down payment, they just gave me the 100 grand. Seems like you're covered. That's different. This was emergency money. I laughed. Actually laughed. Your emergencies have been mine for 25 years now, Thomas, because I've been handling everyone's emergencies while you collected sports cars you couldn't afford and walked away from 2 marriages without paying child support. You're being selfish, he spat. You've always been like this, thinking you're better than everyone. I looked at the spreadsheet open on my laptop, my karma audit, as I'd started calling it. Every loan, every emergency payment, every guilt trip-induced transfer since I was 27. The total at the bottom still made me wince. No, I cut him off. I've always been convenient. There's a difference there too. The doorbell of the coffee shop jingled, and I looked up to see my mother and father walking in, looking panicked. Dad was holding papers, probably bank statements. Mom was crying. Perfect timing, as always. As they approached, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. I heard what you did. Smart girl. Call me. We should talk. Rebecca. Rebecca, my cousin, the other family exile. I hadn't heard from her in 25 years, not since she'd been branded difficult for questioning our grandmother's will. Margaret, my father's authoritative banker voice, boomed across the coffee shop. Heads turned. We need to talk. Now. For the first time in my life, I didn't jump to accommodate them. I'm working, Dad. You should have called ahead. Mother's eyes widened in shock. This wasn't the script. This wasn't how their reliable daughter behaved. The account. Dad lowered his voice, sliding into the chair across from me without invitation. There's been some mistake. No mistake, I said evenly. I closed it. But that's our emergency fund. Mother hissed, clutching her designer purse bought with money I'd given them for her knee surgery that mysteriously never happened. No, that was my account that you had access to. And now you don't. After everything we've done for you? Mother's voice cracked with genuine disbelief. That's when I realized they truly believed their narrative. In their story, they were the generous parents who had given me everything, and I was the ungrateful daughter who owed them eternal debt. I have a client coming, I said, gathering my things. We can discuss this another time, or not at all. As I walked out, leaving them stunned in the middle of the coffee shop, I felt something unfamiliar, not guilt, not obligation, but a lightness I hadn't experienced in 25 years. Flashback the Sunday dinner. The following Sunday, against my better judgment and Carol's explicit advice, I went to their house for dinner. Old habits. You look tired, honey. Are you eating enough? Working too hard again? Mom fussed with my collar, her fingers lingering just long enough to make it feel like an accusation. A woman your age needs to take care of herself. You're not getting any younger. I smiled tightly, carefully extracting myself from her grip. The dining room was suffocating with fake pleasantries and the smell of pot roast. Thomas sat across from me, practically glowing as he detailed his new house plans to Dad. And the master bath has this huge soaking tub, perfect for a future wife, right? He winked at Mom, who beamed back adoringly. Despite being 48, twice divorced, and barely keeping his job at the real estate agency, Thomas was still the golden child. His thinning hair and expanding waistline didn't diminish his status in their eyes. High blood pressure medication sat next to his plate, another expense I'd covered last year. Speaking of which, Mom chirped. Sarah's daughter, Rachel, is single again. Such a sweet girl, and she works part-time at the library, much more suitable hours than what you keep, Margaret. I stabbed a potato with more force than necessary. My hours suit me just fine, Mom. My business cleared 7 figures last year. The table went silent. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. That's very aggressive of you, sweetheart, Mom finally said, her voice dripping with concern. Men don't usually like women who make more than them. Yeah, you've mentioned that several times. Every time I'd achieved anything, in fact. Thomas laughed nervously. Come on, sis, no need to get all feminist about it. Hey, want to hear about the wine cellar I'm planning? Actually, I set down my fork. I'd love to hear how you're affording all these renovations, considering your commission checks barely cover your alimony payments. More silence. Dad cleared his throat. Margaret, that's not very. What? Not very ladylike to ask about money? Funny, you never thought it was unladylike when you needed me to cover your mortgage. That was different, Mom snapped. That was family helping family. This attitude of yours, this cutthroat business mentality, it's not healthy. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, my lawyer. Final paperwork filed. You're officially clear. I smiled genuinely this time. You know what's not healthy, Mom? The fact that I paid for your knee surgery last year while you were setting aside money for Thomas's house fund. Thomas's face reddened. Hey, that's not fair. You're just jealous because. Because what? I stood up, my chair scraping back. Because I worked my ass off while you coasted? Because I built something real while you waited for handouts? Or because I finally stopped being everyone's backup plan? Margaret. Dad slammed his hand on the table, wincing slightly at the exertion. His heart condition, another thing he refused to acknowledge, despite the medications I paid for. That is enough. Apologize to your brother right now. I laughed, a sharp, cold sound that made Mom flinch. No. What did you say? I said no. I'm done apologizing for being successful. I'm done being told I'm too ambitious, too aggressive, too much. And I'm definitely done watching you throw money at Thomas while treating me like an ATM with a personality disorder. Mom started crying, right on cue. How can you be so cruel after everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me. I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app. Let's review, shall we? Last 3 years. Your mortgage, $48,000. Mom's surgery, $35,000. Dad's car repair, $12,000. Thomas's temporary loan, $15,000. The anniversary cruise you couldn't afford, $8,000. Stop it, Dad warned, his face alarming red. And now, I continued, you give Thomas $100,000 for a house he can't afford while telling me I need to be more suitable for marriage? Make it make sense, Mom. Thomas stood up, face purple. You're just bitter because you're alone. At least I'm trying to build a real life. A real life built on Mom and Dad's money, which is actually my money, and what you thought would be my money too, right? That's why you got James to co-sign instead of asking me, because you knew I'd see right through it. His silence was answer enough. My phone buzzed again. Carol, you okay? Need backup? I texted back quickly. Almost done. Meeting you in 20. If you walk out that door, Dad said quietly, don't bother coming back. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who taught me to balance a checkbook but never taught me to value myself, now threatening me for having the audacity to succeed on my own terms. That's the thing, Dad. I'm not the one who needs to come back. I'm not the one who's going to need anything from anyone anymore. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Behind me, Mom called out, Margaret, please, we're your family. I turned back one last time. No, you're not. You're just people who expected me to set myself on fire to keep everyone else warm, and I'm all out of matches. At the restaurant, Rebecca looked exactly as I imagined she would after 25 years. Elegant, composed, with the quiet confidence of someone who's overcome hardship and found herself on the other side. She sat across from me at the upscale restaurant, stirring her martini with deliberate precision. I saw this coming years ago, she said, when they did the same thing to me. Different details, same story. The trust fund, I asked. She nodded. Grandmother left it for all the grandchildren. Your mother, my dear aunt, convinced everyone I was unstable because I questioned their authority. Next thing I knew, poof, money gone. Family turned against me, branded the difficult one. How much? 200,000 each. She took a sip. But you already knew that, didn't you? That's why you called me back. I pulled out my laptop, opened a folder labeled Family Assets. Look at this. I turned the screen toward her. 3 weeks before they gave Thomas the house money, there was a transfer from an old account, one I used to fund their emergencies. Rebecca leaned forward, eyes narrowing. They used your own money to give him the down payment? 40,000 of it. Money I'd sent them last year for Mom's medical bills. I closed the laptop. Bills that mysteriously never got paid, according to the hospital's records. Jesus, Rebecca sat back. And they still don't think they did anything wrong, do they? The waiter brought our entrees. We ate in silence for a moment before Rebecca spoke again. There's something else you should know. She pulled out her phone, showed me an email. Remember that property in Spain? The one grandfather left to all the grandchildren? My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The villa? What about it? Your mother sold it 3 months ago without informing any of the other owners, including you. The restaurant suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. That's not possible. She'd need signatures. Forge them. All of them. I have proof. Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. She's been planning this, Margaret. They all have. The money they gave Thomas? It's just the tip of the iceberg. My phone buzzed. Carol sending a screenshot of Thomas's latest social media rant. Family is everything until success makes you forget where you came from. Funny, Rebecca commented, reading over my shoulder. They never seem to forget where to find us when they need money. Did you ever confront them? I asked. About the trust fund? I tried. Got the same response you're getting now. Bible verses, family loyalty lectures, gaslighting about how I was imagining things. She smiled grimly. But I did something they didn't expect. What? I documented everything. Every transaction, every lie, every manipulation. Built a case so solid they couldn't twist their way out of it. She pulled out a USB drive. Just like you're doing now. I stared at the small device. What's on it? Everything. Bank records, property documents, emails, 25 years of their financial fraud, including what they did to you. She slid it across the table. Consider it insurance. My phone lit up again. Dad, this time. We're still coming tomorrow. This ends now. They have no idea, do they? Rebecca looked amused. That we're 10 steps ahead? I thought about the meeting tomorrow, about Daniel's carefully prepared documents, about the years of evidence I'd collected. You know what's ironic? They taught us this. All those lectures about being careful with money, keeping receipts, protecting ourselves. They just never thought we'd use those lessons against them. That's the thing about narcissists, Rebecca replied. They think they're the only ones who can play the game. The confrontation, the doorbell rang at exactly 7 p.m. I watched through my security camera as Mom smoothed her hair and Dad adjusted his tie, their battle armor for confrontation. Thomas stood behind them, looking less confident than usual. I buzzed them in. Daniel and Rebecca were already seated in my home office, documents spread across the table. As a corporate lawyer who specialized in financial fraud, Daniel had been instrumental in preparing for this moment. His silver hair and calm demeanor added weight to our position. Margaret, Mom's voice carried down the hallway, saccharine sweet as always. In here, I called back. They filed in, faltering slightly at the sight of Rebecca. Mom's face went pale. What is she doing here? Dad demanded. Sitting? Rebecca replied smoothly. It's what people generally do during financial audits. Financial? Margaret, what is this? Mom's voice trembled. I gestured to the chairs. Please sit down. We have a lot to discuss. If this is about Thomas's house. Dad started. This is about everything, I interrupted, opening my laptop. Every loan, every emergency, every missing dollar, including the villa in Spain. Mom's hand flew to her throat. I don't know what you're. Save it, Rebecca cut in. We have the documentation. All of it. Daniel cleared his throat. Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Bennett, I'm afraid you're in quite a serious situation. Fraud, unauthorized property sale, forged signatures. This is ridiculous. Dad slammed his hand on the table, his banker's authority failing him now. We're family, Margaret. Stop this nonsense right now. I pulled up the spreadsheet, my karma audit. Let's start with last year. March, you needed $15,000 for Mom's knee surgery, money that never made it to the hospital. April, $12,000 for Dad's truck repairs. May, $8,000 for your anniversary cruise. June, we paid you back. Thomas interjected. No, I corrected. You promised to pay me back. There's a difference. Margaret, Mom's voice turned pleading. Everything we did was for this family. You're successful. You could afford. Could I? I turned the laptop toward them. Because while I was paying your bills, I was also taking out business loans, postponing my own life, draining my savings, all while you were secretly funneling money into Thomas's house fund. Dad stood up. This is emotional manipulation. No, Rebecca said quietly. This is accountability. Something this family has always been allergic to. I pulled out a manila envelope. This contains evidence of the unauthorized sale of the Spanish villa, property that belonged to all the grandchildren, not just you, Mom. Care to explain? Mom burst into tears. You're destroying this family. Actually, Daniel interjected, his voice steady. The fraudulent property sale did that along with the forged signatures, misappropriated funds, and what appears to be a pattern of financial exploitation. Thomas had gone very quiet. The house payments. You're really not going to help? James' lawyer called yesterday. I told him you knew you couldn't afford it, didn't you? You were counting on me to bail you out, just like always. You're my sister. And you're my brother, but that doesn't make me your bank. Dad moved toward the door. We're leaving. This is absurd. Leave if you want, I said calmly. But these documents are going to the authorities either way. The only question is whether you want to handle this privately or in court. You wouldn't dare, Mom whispered. Rebecca laughed, a cold, sharp sound. Like you dared to steal my trust fund? Like you dared to sell property that wasn't yours? That was different, Mom protested. How? I asked. Because it benefited you? Because you thought you'd never face consequences? Silence filled the room, heavy, suffocating silence. Here's what's going to happen, Daniel stated, pulling out more papers. You're going to sign these documents acknowledging the debt. You're going to sell your house to repay the fraudulent property sale, and you're going to leave Margaret and Rebecca alone. Or, Dad challenged, or I file these papers first thing tomorrow morning. Your choice. Mom collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Thomas stared at the floor. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Margaret, Mom choked out. Will you ever forgive us? I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman who taught me to be strong, then resented me for it, who preached family loyalty while betraying it. I remembered her as a younger woman, beautiful and vivacious, hosting church functions, always needing to be the center of attention. Had she always been this way, or had something broken her too? I didn't do this to hurt you, I said quietly. You did that all by yourself. Every time you chose Thomas over me, every time you lied, every time you took and took and took, calling it love. Please. The papers are on the table. Sign them or don't, but either way, we're done. They signed, one by one, hands shaking. As they left, Thomas turned back. You know this makes you just like them, right? Using money to hurt people. No, Rebecca answered for me. This makes her smart enough to stop letting people hurt her. The door closed behind them. In the sudden quiet, I could hear my heart beating, steady, strong, free. Well, Daniel gathered the papers. That's phase 1 complete. Phase 1? I asked. Rebecca smiled. Remember that partnership we discussed? Time to help other daughters break their chains. You ready for this? Daughters Freedom Fund. Once it's out there, you can't take it back, Carol said, watching me hover over the post button. I glanced at my screen where my Reddit post waited. I documented my family's financial abuse for 25 years. Today, I finally stopped it. It needs to be told, I said, and clicked. Within hours, the post exploded. Thousands of upvotes, hundreds of comments, all sharing similar stories. Women trapped by family obligation, drained by entitled siblings, guilt-tripped into financial suicide. Look at this one. Rebecca pointed to a comment. My parents remortgaged their house 3 times. Each time they made me cover the payments because family helps family. I lost my own house saving theirs. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Saw your post. Same thing happened to me. How did you get out? Then another. Please help, my brother's destroying my credit. And another. My parents forged my signature too. I thought I was alone. You've started something, Carol said softly. I opened my email to find a message from a major online publication. Would you be willing to share your story? We believe this is part of a larger pattern. Rebecca leaned over my shoulder. Do it, but first I have something to show you. She pulled out her laptop, opened a folder labeled Family Archives. Remember how I said I documented everything? She clicked through files, emails, bank statements, voice recordings. It wasn't just about the money. Look at this. A series of messages appeared, Mom coordinating with other relatives, planning how to pressure me into various loans. Dad discussing how to leverage my duty as a daughter. Thomas admitting he never intended to repay anything. They had a whole system, Rebecca explained, a playbook for emotional manipulation, and they used it on others before us. My phone lit up with a text from Daniel. You need to see this. Thomas filed for bankruptcy, listed you as a creditor. Of course he did, I muttered. That's not all, Daniel continued. Your parents are trying to claim you stole from them. They're building a counter-narrative. Carol grabbed her laptop. Already on damage control. She pulled up my viral Reddit post where supportive comments were flooding in faster than I could read them. Let them try, Rebecca said. We have receipts, literal and figurative. I started typing my response to the publication. Yes, I'll tell my story, but it's bigger than just me. It's about generational patterns of financial abuse disguised as family obligation. Wait, Carol interrupted. Look at this. She turned her screen to show a Facebook post from Mom. With heavy hearts, we must address the lies being spread about our family. Our daughter, influenced by toxic individuals, has chosen money over blood. Toxic individuals, Rebecca laughed. That's rich coming from the woman who stole her niece's trust fund. I looked at the growing response to my post, the women sharing their own stories, the pattern emerging clear as day. Then I did something I'd been planning for months. I opened a new document and started writing an open letter to daughters who were made to pay. I see you, I wrote. The ones who were told that love means empty bank accounts, the ones who were called selfish for having boundaries, the ones who were made to feel guilty for their success. What are you doing? Carol asked. Creating a blueprint, I replied, for every woman who needs to escape what I did. Rebecca nodded approvingly. Add the legal resources, the documentation strategies, everything we learned. 2 months later, your brother forged your signature, Daniel announced, spreading documents across my office table. Multiple times, actually, on loan applications, credit cards, even a car lease. I stared at the papers, at Thomas's clumsy attempt to replicate my signature. Why am I not surprised? Daniel pointed to a date. This one's from just 2 weeks before they gave him the down payment. Rebecca, who'd been quietly observing, leaned forward. He knew. They all knew this would happen. My phone buzzed. Carol sending screenshots of Mom's latest social media crusade. Prayer warriors needed. Satan is attacking our family through material greed. They're selling the house, Rebecca reported, scrolling through her phone. Listed it yesterday, way under market value. They have to, Daniel explained. The fraud investigation is gaining momentum. Better to sell now than lose it in court. My office door burst open. Thomas stood there, face red, eyes wild. How could you? He shouted. They're losing everything because of you. Sir, you can't be here, my assistant called from behind him. Because of me? I stood slowly. Not because of the fraud, the forgery, the years of theft disguised as family obligation. I was going to pay it back. Once the house appreciated, once I was on my feet. Like with these. I held up the forged documents. He paled slightly. Those aren't. I can explain. Save it for the investigators, Daniel interrupted. They're very interested in your explanation. Thomas's face crumpled. Mom and Dad are devastated. They might lose their retirement. They lost their retirement the moment they chose to enable you, Rebecca said coldly. Margaret just exposed what they did to themselves. My phone rang. Dad. I answered on speaker. Margaret. His voice was rough. We need to talk face to face. Nothing left to say, Dad. Please, your mother. She's not well. The stress. The stress of getting caught, Rebecca interjected. Silence. Then, Rebecca, you're still poisoning my daughter's mind. No, Uncle Howard, just helping her see clearly, something you never wanted. Thomas moved toward me, hands raised pleadingly. Sis, please, we can fix this, make it right. Make it right like when you made right the $15,000 you borrowed for your startup? Or the $8,000 for your ex-girlfriend's ring? Or should we talk about the credit cards you opened in my name? I was desperate. You were entitled, I corrected. There's a difference. My assistant appeared with security. Thomas didn't resist as they let him out, but his last words hung in the air. You'll regret destroying this family. The family destroyed itself, Rebecca said quietly. We're just refusing to sync with it. Present-day conference room. And now, 3 months later, I stand before hundreds of women, sharing my story, our story. The Daughters Freedom Fund is officially launched, a resource center and support network for women trapped in familial financial abuse. Financial abuse doesn't always come from a spouse, I tell the rapt audience. Sometimes it comes wrapped in I love you and we're family. Sometimes it comes with birthday cards and Sunday dinners. But it's still abuse. As I spoke, I noticed my mother still sitting in the back, listening intently. After the session, while women lined up to share their stories, Carol rushed over with her laptop. Thomas's sentencing just came down, she announced. 3 years for fraud. James' testimony sealed it. And Dad? Rebecca asked, joining us. Fled to Spain last week, Carol replied, but the authorities there are already aware of the property fraud. It's only a matter of time. I noticed Mom still sitting in the back, clutching her purse. When our eyes met again, She stood and walked over slowly. Margaret, her voice was barely a whisper. I. I watched your interview on television. All of it? I asked. Even the parts about the forged documents, the stolen trust fund? She flinched. I didn't know about all of it. Thomas told us. Save it, Rebecca cut in. You knew enough. Mom's hands twisted together. Your father, he's not well. The stress. The stress of consequences, I corrected. Different from the stress he put me under all those years. We're losing everything, she said quietly. No, Mom. You're losing what was never really yours, including me. She reached for her phone, hands shaking. I want to show you something. She pulled up a familiar spreadsheet, my karma audit. I've been adding to it, everything we took, everything I did. Rebecca and Carol exchanged glances. Why? I asked. Because you were right about all of it. The manipulation, the guilt, the theft. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was wrong. We were wrong. Mom. No. Let me finish. I watched those women today telling their stories. They were telling my story too. The story of what I did to my daughter, what my mother did to me. I thought about generational patterns, about how my grandmother had treated my mother, about cycles repeating. The house sold, Mom continued. I'm using my half to pay back the trust fund, Rebecca's trust fund. It won't fix anything, but it's a start. Rebecca stiffened beside me, but said nothing. I'd like to, if you'll let me, Mom said, standing straighter. I want to tell my story about being the mother who hurt her daughter. Maybe it will help other mothers stop. I looked at Rebecca, who nodded slightly. The next session is Thursday, I said. Be ready to tell the whole truth. I will. She turned to leave, then paused. Margaret, I'm sorry, not because we got caught, because we hurt you. After she left, Carol whistled low. Well, that was unexpected. Think she means it? I watched through the window as Mom walked to her car, not the luxury sedan she used to drive, but a modest use model. Maybe, I replied. But that's not why we do this anymore. My phone lit up with notifications, more women finding their voice, more daughters breaking free, more mothers facing truth. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder. Ready for the next session? I looked around the room where hundreds of women had just shared their stories, where my mother had finally spoken truth instead of manipulation, where patterns were breaking one story at a time. You know what Thomas said to me once? I told them, family is everything until success makes you forget where you came from. Carol prompted. He was wrong. Success didn't make me forget. It made me remember exactly who I am, not despite them, but because I survived them. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Daniel. Trust fund repayment received. Rebecca's account restored. Justice served. Speaking of justice, Rebecca smiled. The nonprofit paperwork came through. Daughter's Freedom Fund is officially launched. Carol raised her water bottle. To karma and making it sustainable. I thought about Mom's tearful confession, about Thomas's sentencing, about Dad running from consequences, about all the daughters still finding their way to freedom, to truth. To truth, I corrected, and all the women brave enough to speak it. Epilogue 6 months later. The small office space overlooking downtown was a far cry from my consulting suite, but it felt more like home than anywhere I'd worked before. The Daughters Freedom Fund headquarters, with its warm lighting and comfortable chairs, had become a sanctuary for women seeking escape from financial exploitation. We've got 3 new cases this week, Rebecca said, dropping a stack of folders on my desk. All sisters with brothers who can do no wrong. I sighed, flipping through the first file. The pattern never changes, does it? Only when we break it. Rebecca perched on the edge of my desk. Oh, and your mother called again. She wants to know if she can speak at next month's workshop. Since her first appearance at our conference, Mom had undergone a transformation that still left me cautious but hopeful. After Dad's arrest in Spain, where he'd fled with what remained of their assets, she'd moved into a small apartment and started therapy. Her work with our organization had been surprisingly genuine, her testimony helping other mothers recognize their own enabling patterns. What did you tell her? I asked. That it's your call. Rebecca's expression remained neutral, but I knew she was still processing her own complicated feelings about my mother's redemption arc. The forgiveness, if that's what this was, came in small increments. A truth acknowledged here, a boundary respected there. Not the dramatic reconciliation movies promised, but something more realistic, more sustainable. Tell her yes, I said after a moment. But make it clear she's speaking about her mistakes, not my forgiveness. Rebecca nodded, understanding the distinction. My phone rang. Carol, calling from the hospital where she worked. Turn on channel 7 right now, she said without preamble. I grabbed the remote for the small TV in my office, switching it on just in time to catch Thomas being interviewed outside the courthouse, his lawyer beside him. Deeply regret my actions and the pain I've caused, he was saying, looking appropriately contrite for the cameras. Addiction and entitlement are a dangerous combination, and I'm getting help for both. Any comment on your sister's organization? The reporter asked. Thomas hesitated, then said something that made me sit up straighter. Margaret was right. About everything. I didn't want to see it, but she was. What our family did to her, what I did. It wasn't love. It was exploitation. And I hope someday she'll let me make amends. I turned to Rebecca, who looked as stunned as I felt. Think he means it? She asked. I think 3 years in prison gives a person time to think, I replied carefully. But actions speak louder than courthouse interviews. The door opened and Carol walked in, having rushed over after her call. Well, that was unexpected, she said, nodding at the TV. Day of surprises, I agreed, showing her the latest financial report. We've secured enough funding for the legal aid program. Women who can't afford representation will get it free of charge. Carol let out a whoop of delight. Take that, financial abusers of America. As they high-fived, I turned to the window, watching the city below. Somewhere out there were thousands of women still trapped in the cycle, still setting themselves on fire to keep others warm, still believing that love meant empty bank accounts and silent suffering. But things were changing. One story, one spreadsheet, one boundary at a time. My phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. I'm 58 and just closed the family account after 30 years. Your story saved me. Thank you, I smiled, typing back. Welcome to freedom. The first day is the hardest. It gets better. And it had. The road from that coffee shop confrontation to this moment hadn't been easy. There had been legal battles, sleepless nights, moments of doubt, and yes, grief for the family I'd wished we could be. But standing here, watching Rebecca and Carol plan our expansion to 3 new cities, I knew I'd made the right choice. You know, Rebecca said, interrupting my thoughts, we should add a section to the website about middle-aged women specifically. The cultural messaging that makes us especially vulnerable to this kind of exploitation. Good idea, I agreed. The "you're not getting any younger" manipulation tactic. Exactly, Carol nodded. And they, who will take care of you when you're old, fear-mongering. We were interrupted by a knock at the door. My assistant poked her head in. Your 3 o'clock is here. She's pretty nervous. I nodded, gathering myself. Another woman at the beginning of her journey, another daughter ready to break free. Send her in, I said, straightening the small plaque on my desk that read, Your worth isn't measured in dollars given or debts forgiven. As the door opened, I stood to greet our newest client, extending my hand with the smile of someone who'd walked the same path. Welcome to Daughters Freedom Fund. You're not alone anymore. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city, a reminder that darkness never truly wins as long as someone, somewhere, is brave enough to stand in the light and tell their truth. I had found that courage, and now I was helping others find theirs. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice anymore. It was about freedom, the freedom to be more than someone else's resource, the freedom to write our own stories. And my story was just beginning. Divorce papers. I slid the manila folder across the table in my lawyer's office, watching my husband's face transform from confusion to shock to rage within seconds. His knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. Olivia, you can't be serious, James hissed, glancing nervously at my attorney. We need to discuss this privately. I leaned back in my chair, strangely calm despite the hurricane raging inside me. There's nothing to discuss. You used my identity to secure a loan I never approved, used my house down payment to buy your mother a vacation home, and have been systematically draining my accounts for years. This marriage is already over. These papers just make it official. It was borrowing, not stealing. His voice cracked. Everything we did was for the family. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Funny how family always means what you want, when you want it, at my expense. James reached across the table, his eyes pleading. Liv, please. Your in-laws need us. Amber needs us. No, I stood up, gathering my purse. They need my money. There's a difference. As I walked out, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass door, shoulders straight, head high, eyes clear despite the tears threatening to spill. I hardly recognized myself. The dutiful, responsible Olivia Wilson I'd been for 34 years was gone, replaced by someone with boundaries and the courage to enforce them. My phone buzzed with a text from Amber. Mom and Dad are freaking out. What did you do to James? I didn't respond. The memory of a gleaming red sports car in my parents' driveway flashed before my eyes, and with it, the moment my life changed forever. Flashback 2 months earlier. The red Porsche gleamed like fresh blood in my parents' driveway. I gripped my Honda's steering wheel, knuckles white, as my sister Amber twirled around it, squealing like she'd just won the lottery. But I knew better. She had won the lottery with my money. I stepped out of my sensible sedan, still wearing my work clothes after a 12-hour day at the financial firm. My phone had been buzzing with overdraft alerts for the past hour, but I'd been ignoring them, praying it was all a mistake. Isn't she gorgeous? Amber ran her perfectly manicured fingers along the hood. I got such a deal. The salesman practically gave it away. Amber. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Where did you get the money for this? She tossed her perfectly styled blonde hair, our mother's legacy, though I'd never bothered with the expensive salon visits she considered essential. Oh, don't start with the lecture. Mom and Dad helped me figure it out, right guys? Our parents stood in the background, champagne glasses in hand. Mom gave me that familiar pleading look, the one that always meant, don't rock the boat. Your sister needed reliable transportation. Honey, Mom said, stepping forward. We just accessed that emergency account you set up for the family. The world tilted sideways. That wasn't an emergency account. That was my house down payment. $75,000. 5 years of sacrifices, overtime, and denied vacations, gone in an instant for a car my sister didn't need and couldn't afford. Don't be dramatic. Amber rolled her eyes. You can save it up again. You're good with money. It's like your whole thing. Besides, you're always saying family comes first. I pulled out my phone, showing her the balance. You drained my account down to $127.43 without asking me, without even telling me. Dad cleared his throat, the same sound he'd made when I was 10, and asked why my birthday money from Grandma went to Amber's dance lessons. Now, Olivia, your sister has interviews coming up. She needs to make the right impression. Interviews? I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. For what? The 3 jobs she's quit this year, or the degree she never finished? That's not fair. Amber's face crumpled into tears, right on cue. Mom, she's being mean. I watched as Mom rushed to comfort her, draping an arm around Amber's shoulders while shooting me a reproachful look. The scene was so familiar it was almost comical. Amber cries, Mom comforts, Dad justifies, and I'm cast as the villain for pointing out reality. When did I become the villain in my own life? A thought struck me like lightning. I'd been playing this role for as long as I could remember, the responsible one, the steady one, the one who could be counted on to clean up everyone else's messes, cover their bills, keep their secrets. I'd been doing it since I was 12, watching Mom sleep off her headaches while I got Amber ready for school. I remembered making her lunches, helping her with homework, all while Mom praised her artistic talents and Dad boasted about her beauty pageant wins. Even in college, I'd worked multiple jobs to cover my expenses while they drained their savings for Amber's 3rd attempt at a degree she'd never complete. You're right. I said quietly, pulling out my phone. I am the strong one. See? Mom brightened. I knew you'd understand. I'm also the one whose name is on all the family financial accounts. I dialed the bank's number. The one who's been covering Dad's credit card payments since his early retirement. The one whose savings account was collateral for your emergency line of credit. Dad's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. What are you doing? Yes, hello. I spoke clearly into the phone. This is Olivia Wilson. I need to close account number 847,392, effective immediately. Yes, I understand this will affect linked accounts. That's exactly what I want. Olivia, stop. Mom lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. You can't do this. Actually, I can. It's my money. I met Amber's wide eyes. Enjoy the car, sis. Hope it was worth it. Flashback 12 years earlier. You got into Stanford? Mom's voice held more disbelief than pride as she stared at the acceptance letter in my hands. With a scholarship? I nodded, unable to contain my smile despite her reaction. At 22, after 4 years of working part-time job while maintaining a perfect GPA, I'd been accepted to my dream business school with a partial scholarship. But Stanford is in California. Dad frowned. That's so far away. Who's going to help with Amber's college applications? And her prom is coming up. You know your mother can't handle all that stress alone. My voice faltered. I thought you'd be happy for me. Of course we're happy, Mom said quickly, though her expression hadn't changed. It's just surprising. You've always been so practical, so focused on helping the family. This seems selfish. The words sliced through me. Selfish. After years of putting my family first, of working multiple jobs to avoid asking for money, of tutoring Amber for free when they couldn't afford a professional, this was selfish? Stanford is expensive, Dad continued, even with a scholarship. You'd be better off going somewhere local, saving money. You're so good at saving money, Olivia. I've been planning this for years, I said quietly. I've saved enough for the first year, and with work study, but what about Amber? Mom interrupted. She's failing 3 classes. If she doesn't graduate, she'll lose her spot at state. And you know how she gets when she's stressed? Her anxiety goes through the roof. I looked at the acceptance letter in my hands, the embossed logo suddenly heavy. Maybe I could defer for a year, I heard myself say. Just until Amber gets situated. The relief on their faces was immediate. That's our Olivia, Dad smiled. Always thinking of others. So responsible. I never did make it to Stanford. The deferral turned into a decline when Amber's 1 year of needing help stretched into 3. By then, I'd started my career at a local finance firm, moving up quickly with my natural aptitude for numbers. It worked out for the best, Mom would say whenever Stanford came up. You're doing so well right where you are. And you've been such a help to Amber. I'd smile and agree, ignoring the quiet voice that whispered, but what about me? When does it get to be about me? At Nathan's apartment that night. I still can't believe you did it, Nathan said, sliding his laptop across the coffee table. 3 days. That's how long it'll take for the bank's system to fully process the account closure and trigger the domino effect. I stared into my gin and tonic, ice cubes clinking as I swirled the glass. They've called 17 times since I left. I stopped counting the texts. Let me see. Nathan scrolled through my phone. Olivia, please call us immediately. This is an emergency. Your sister is crying herself sick. Oh, this is rich. We raised you better than this. Did they, though? I took another sip. The alcohol burned pleasantly, dulling the edges of my rage. You know what I remember from growing up? Making Amber's lunch while Mom was resting, helping Dad balance checkbooks at 13 because he couldn't figure out why they were always overdrawn, being told I couldn't go to Stanford because Amber needed braces. And now they took your house down payment. Nathan's fingers flew across the keyboard. Look at this. They've been siphoning money from your linked accounts for years. Small amounts, but it adds up. $20 here, $50 there. The bar's dim lighting couldn't hide the growing list of transactions. They'd been stealing from me in plain sight, betting I wouldn't notice because I never had before. My phone buzzed again. Mom's face filled the screen. You should answer it, Nathan said. They need to understand this isn't a game anymore. I took a deep breath and picked up. Hello? Olivia, Mom's voice cracked with panic. The bank called. They're saying something about defaulted credit lines and frozen accounts. What did you do? Exactly what I said I would. I closed my accounts. But, but James' cards aren't working. We have bills due. Amber needs. I cut her off. What about what I need, Mom? Like the house I've been saving for since I was 23? That's different. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. We didn't steal. Mom's voice rose. We borrowed. You know we're good for it. Are you really? Because according to Dad's credit report, yes, I can see it. I'm still listed as an authorized user. You're maxed out on 6 cards. Cards I've been making minimum payments on for 2 years. Silence crackled over the line. Olivia, Mom's voice dropped to a whisper. Please, just come over. We can talk about this. Sure, I finished my drink. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As I hung up, Nathan raised an eyebrow. You're really going? They need to see my face when their world crashes down. I grabbed my purse. Want to drive? Flashback early marriage. James had seemed so different from my family. Responsible. Ambitious. Careful with money. I love how grounded you are, he told me on our third date 5 years ago. You know what you want and you're not afraid to work for it. I remember feeling seen for the first time in my life. My practicality, dismissed as boring by my family, was something he admired. When he proposed 6 months later, I said yes without hesitation. The first warning sign came at our wedding. James' parents, Margaret and Richard Wilson, gave an uncomfortably lavish toast about how their son had always deserved the finest things in life. We gave him everything. Margaret had gushed, champagne sloshing in her glass. The best schools, the best opportunities, the best start in life. And now he has the best wife to continue that tradition. Later, I learned what the best schools meant. Private education they couldn't afford, second mortgages they never paid off, credit card debt that followed them into retirement. Like my parents, they'd lived beyond their means, but with a veneer of sophistication my family never bothered with. I should have seen it then, how James checked his watch when the topic of money came up, how his parents spoke of debt like an old friend rather than a warning. I should have noticed how his eyes lit up when I mentioned my savings plan. But I was too busy feeling special, chosen, different from Amber. I was the responsible one who'd finally found my reward, a husband who valued that responsibility. What a fool I'd been. The first money request came 6 months after our wedding. Just a small loan, James had explained, to help his parents catch up on their mortgage after his father's unexpected medical bills. Of course, I agreed. They were family now, and family helped each other. The second request came 3 months later. Another small loan, this time for his mother's cataract surgery. Then his cousin's business venture. Then his father's investment opportunity. Small amounts at first, growing larger as I advanced in my career. I justified each one. That's what partners did, support each other's families. I didn't want to be like my parents, playing favorites with financial help. I wanted to be fair, to be generous, to be loved for that generosity. It took me 5 years to realize I was repeating the same pattern, just with a different cast of characters. At my parents' house, the confrontation. 20 minutes later, I walked into my parents' living room. Amber's mascara-streaked face glared at me from the couch. Dad paced by the window, phone pressed to his ear. My husband James sat in the corner, looking pale and uncomfortable. The bank won't budge, Dad announced, hanging up. They're calling in all the credit lines by Friday. Something about, what was it? Unsecured collateral. That would be my savings account. I sat in the armchair, crossing my legs, the one Amber emptied for her midlife crisis car. This isn't funny, Olivia. Amber shrieked. They're saying I might lose the car. Do you know how embarrassing that would be? Almost as embarrassing as having to tell my realtor I lost my down payment. I kept my voice level. Or maybe as embarrassing as finding out my family's been treating me like their personal ATM for years. We never meant to hurt you. Mom started crying. We just. Things have been tight since your father retired at 55 with no savings after I told him it was a terrible idea. Dad's face reddened. Now listen here, young lady. No, you listen. I stood up. For years, I've covered your mistakes, paid your bills, kept your secrets. And how do you repay me? By helping Amber steal the one thing I was saving for myself. But you're so good with money, Amber wailed. You can just save it up again. You're right. I am good with money. I walked to the door. Which is why I'm cutting you all off for good. James finally spoke up, his voice tight. Olivia, you're overreacting. Your father helped me secure that small business loan. I spun around. What small business loan? The room went silent. 4 pairs of eyes avoided mine. What? Small business loan? I repeated, each word like ice. It's nothing, James stammered. Just a little startup capital for that investment opportunity I told you about. You never told me about any investment opportunity. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. How much? Olivia, how? Much? 100,000, he whispered. The world tilted again. $100,000. On top of my 75,000 house down payment. That was more than half of our total savings. And you used my name to secure it, I said. Not a question but a statement. We needed your credit score, Dad explained, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. James wasn't high enough. I turned to my husband of 5 years, the man I trusted with everything. Did you forge my signature? His silence was answer enough. Check your mail tomorrow, I said, opening the door. The bank's sending formal notices about the default. Oh, and Amber, better park that car in the garage. Repo men work at night. The door closed behind me with a soft click. In the driveway, Nathan waited in his car, engine running. You okay? He asked as I buckled in. I watched my mother's silhouette appear in the window, phone already pressed to her ear, probably calling her sister to borrow money. No, I answered honestly, but I will be. For the first time in my life, I will be. At my office next morning, the financial data spilled across my desk in neat columns, each number telling its own story of calculated risk and potential growth. This was my world, organized, predictable, controllable. So unlike the chaos of my personal life. Olivia? Michael's voice pulled me from my thoughts. My boss stood in the doorway, his expression concerned. Do you have a minute? I nodded, quickly closing the personal email I'd been drafting to my lawyer. I couldn't help but notice you've seemed distracted lately, he said, taking a seat across from me. Is everything all right? For a moment, I considered giving my standard answer, the one I'd perfected over decades. And everything's fine. Just a little family matter. I've got it under control. Instead, I heard myself say, no, it's not. My family has been committing identity theft and fraud using my information, and I'm preparing to press charges. Michael's eyebrows shot up. That's not what I was expecting to hear. Trust me, it wasn't what I was expecting to discover either. He studied me for a moment. You know, most people would be too embarrassed to admit something like that at work, especially in your position. I'm not most people, I replied. And I'm done covering for other people's poor choices, even if they're family. A slow smile spread across Michael's face. That's exactly why you're my best analyst. Direct, honest, uncompromising with the facts. He leaned forward. Is there anything I can do to help? I hesitated. Actually, yes. My sister has been using me as a reference for jobs, claiming experience and education she doesn't have. One of her applications might come through your desk. I'll keep an eye out. He stood up. And Olivia? Take whatever time you need to handle this. Your work will be here when you get back. As he left, I stared at his retreating form, momentarily stunned. I'd expected judgment, maybe even concern about how this family drama might affect my performance. Instead, I'd received understanding and support. It was such a stark contrast to my family's reactions that tears pricked at my eyes. I blinked them away, turning back to my computer. I had a lot of work to do, both professionally and personally. At my apartment 1 week later, they're outside again, Nathan said, peering through my apartment blinds. Your mom's crying in the car while Amber's buzzing every unit in the building. I didn't look up from my laptop. They've been doing this for 3 days. The neighbors are starting to complain. My phone lit up with another text from Amber. You're destroying this family. Actually, a new voice called from my kitchen. They're destroying themselves quite nicely without your help. Rachel, my best friend and realtor, emerged with 3 cups of coffee. The repo men picked up Amber's car this morning. I may have recorded it for posterity. Show me, I said, reaching for her phone. The video showed Amber screaming at 2 impassive men as they hooked up her red Porsche to a tow truck. Mom tried to block them with her body while Dad waved papers in their faces. Those papers, I pointed, are probably the loan documents they forged my signature on. Found that out yesterday. Identity theft. Rachel whistled. That's not just karma anymore. That's criminal. The buzzer rang again. Amber's voice crackled through the intercom. I know you're in there. You can't ignore us forever. Watch me, I muttered. But Rachel was already striding to the intercom. Listen up, you entitled little brat, she snapped into the speaker. Your sister's not available to bail you out anymore. Try getting a job instead of a lawyer. You'll need both. Nathan choked on his coffee. Damn, Rachel. Someone had to say it. She turned to me. Speaking of lawyers, did you file those identity theft charges? Tomorrow morning. I pulled up the documents on my screen, along with proof they used my information to secure loans I never approved. I've got an appointment with Detective Carter at 9. The buzzer started again, this time continuously. Mom's voice joined Amber's, both talking over each other in desperate pleas. That's it. Rachel grabbed her purse. I'm calling the police. This is harassment. Wait, I said, standing up. I'll handle it. I took the elevator down, my heart pounding but my steps steady. The lobby doors opened to reveal Amber's mascara-streaked face pressed against the glass, Mom hovering behind her. Finally, Amber shoved through the door as I opened it. Do you know what you've done? The bank froze everything. They're saying Dad might face fraud charges. That's what happens when you forge loan documents, I replied calmly. We didn't forge anything. Mom protested. We just used your information as a guarantor. You've always helped before. Always helped? Something snapped inside me. You mean like when I was 14, getting up at 5 a.m. to tutor Amber before school because you couldn't be bothered? Or when I worked 2 jobs in college while Amber dropped out of 3 universities on my dime? That's not fair. Amber stepped closer. You're just jealous because… Because what? I cut her off. Because Mom and Dad love you more? They can keep their love. I'm done paying for it. Please, Mom grabbed my hand. We can fix this. Just talk to the bank. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I pulled my hand away. Like when I was 10 and you borrowed my birthday money from Grandma for Amber's dance lessons? Or last Christmas when Dad borrowed my credit card for her spring break trip? Those misunderstandings? Those were different times. No, my voice was ice. Those were practice runs. You've been testing my boundaries my whole life, seeing how much you could take before I broke. Guess what? You finally did it. Amber's face crumpled. But you're my sister. You're supposed to protect me. I did protect you. For 29 years. I protected you from consequences. Not anymore. A police car pulled up to the curb, Rachel stepping out of her car behind it. Miss? The officer approached. We received a complaint about harassment. That's them, Rachel pointed. They've been harassing my friend for days. Mom's face went pale. Olivia, you wouldn't. I would. I stepped back into my building. And if you come here again, I'll add it to the identity theft charges I'm filing tomorrow. Identity theft? The officer's expression hardened. Ma'am, I'm going to need you both to step away from the building. I watched through the lobby windows as the officer escorted them to their car. Amber looked back once, her expression a mix of fury and fear. Mom didn't look back at all. Flashback, my first apartment. It's so small, Mom had said, wrinkling her nose as she surveyed my first apartment 6 years ago. And in this neighborhood? Olivia, surely with your salary, you could afford something nicer. I'd been so proud of that apartment, my first real step toward independence at 28. After years of living at home to save money, and if I'm honest, to help with Amber, I'd finally found a place of my own. It's perfect for me, I'd replied, trying to keep the defensiveness from my voice. And it's within my budget. Budget? Dad had scoffed. You're too obsessed with budgets. You need to live a little. I'd bitten back the obvious response that his aversion to budgets was precisely why I'd spent my 20s helping him manage their finances and pay off debts. Speaking of budgets, Mom had said, her voice taking on that familiar wheedling tone. Now that you're not paying rent at home, you'll have extra money each month. Your father and I were thinking, and there it was. The real reason for their visit wasn't to celebrate my independence, but to ensure I didn't forget my obligations to them. By the end of that housewarming dinner, I'd somehow agreed to cover Amber's car insurance and her phone bill just until she finds a steady job. That temporary arrangement had continued for 2 years until I met James and moved in with him. Then a new set of financial obligations took their place. Looking back, I realized I'd never truly been independent. I'd just traded one form of control for another, one set of dependencies for a new one. I'd been so desperate to be valued, to be needed, that I'd allowed myself to be used instead. Not anymore. At the police station the next day, the police station's fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and washed out. Detective Carter spread the documents across her desk, eyebrows rising as she flipped through each page. This is extensive, she said, looking up at me. And you're saying this has been going on for years? I didn't realize how long until last week. I handed her another folder. These are the forged loan documents. My signature's on all of them, but I never signed anything. And your parents, sister, and husband did this? Yes. My voice didn't shake anymore when I said it. They used my information to secure loans, open credit lines, even co-sign a car. The detective made notes, her face grim. This is serious fraud, Ms. Wilson. Once we file these charges, there's no going back. Are you sure you want to proceed? Was I sure? I thought about my childhood, how I'd learned to cook dinner at 11 because Mom was too tired, how I'd started working summer jobs at 15 to buy my own school supplies because Amber's pageant costumes were more important, how I'd given up my dream school because my family needed me to stay close and help out. I thought about the 5 years I'd spent saving for a house, working overtime, skipping vacations, bringing lunch from home every day. I thought about James, who I trusted with everything, forging my signature for a business opportunity that would undoubtedly fail like all his previous get-rich-quick schemes. My phone buzzed. Another text from Amber. Dad's having chest pains because of you. Hope you're happy. I turned my phone around to show the detective. This is why I'm sure. They're still trying to manipulate me, even now. I see this more often than you'd think, she said kindly. Family financial abuse is frustratingly common, especially targeting women who are seen as the responsible ones. The door opened and Michael, my boss, strode in with a thick manila envelope. Sorry I'm late, he said, taking a seat. But I brought something you need to see. He spread more documents across the detective's desk. Employment verifications, academic records, loan applications, all with my forged signature as a reference or guarantor. Your sister's been using your name to apply for jobs across the city, claiming you'd verify her fake credentials. Some companies have already started investigating. Detective Carter's pen moved faster. This changes things. We're looking at multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. My phone rang. Mom again. The detective nodded for me to answer and put it on speaker. Olivia, please? Mom's voice crackled through. The bank is threatening to press charges against your father. They're saying something about loan fraud. You have to help us. I can't, Mom. Not anymore. But we're family. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I laughed. You mean stealing my identity, forging my signature, draining my accounts? We never meant to hurt you. We just needed help, and you're so good with money. Mrs. Wilson, Detective Carter cut in. This is Detective Carter with the Financial Crimes Unit. I advise you to stop talking and contact a lawyer immediately. The line went dead. That should give them something to think about, the detective said, gathering the documents. We'll start processing these right away. Given the evidence, we should have arrest warrants by tomorrow. Arrest warrants? My stomach lurched. They'll actually be arrested? This is felony fraud, Michael said gently. What did you think would happen? Before I could answer, my phone exploded with text from Amber. What did you do? The police are calling Mom and Dad. I can't believe you betray us like this. You're dead to me. The last message was a photo of us as kids, me helping Amber with her homework, both of us smiling. The caption read, "Remember when you were actually a good sister?" That's their specialty, I told Detective Carter, showing her the messages. Emotional manipulation. They take and take, then make you feel guilty for noticing. She nodded. Would you like to press charges for the harassment as well? Yes, I said, surprising myself with my firmness. Yes, I would. The days between a mounting pressure. The arrest warrants were issued on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, local news had picked up the story. Local family charged an identity theft scheme, read the headline. The article included a quote from my mother claiming I was mentally unstable and misunderstanding family obligations. Classic narcissist move, Nathan said when I showed him the article. When caught, discredit the victim. The calls intensified, not just from my immediate family now, but from aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. Each one more accusatory than the last. How could you do this to your own parents? Aunt Linda demanded when I answered her call. They're devastated. Amber's reputation is ruined. Their reputation? I kept my voice steady. You mean their reputation for stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from me, for forging my signature, for committing felony fraud? Their family. Family helps each other. Really? I shuffled through papers on my desk. Because I have proof here that they used your identity too. Want me to tell you how much that they put in your name? The line went dead. By Friday, the pressure had become almost unbearable. James' parents had joined the fray, leaving tearful voicemails about how I was destroying their son's life. My email was flooded with messages from Amber's friends, calling me heartless and cruel. My parents' lawyers sent a proposal. If I dropped the charges, they would acknowledge the debt and set up a payment plan. No mention of the forged signatures, the identity theft, the years of financial abuse. Delete it, Rachel advised when I showed her the email. They're still trying to control the narrative. Instead, I drafted a response. Your clients committed systematic financial fraud over several years, stealing my identity and hundreds of thousands of dollars. They showed no remorse until faced with legal consequences. I will not be dropping the charges. Instead, I will be submitting a victim impact statement detailing every forged signature, every stolen dollar, and every attempt to destroy my reputation when I finally stood up for myself. They wanted to play games with the legal system? Game on. Regards, Olivia. Savage, Rachel whispered, reading over my shoulder. No, I hit send. Just honest. On Sunday night, my phone lit up with a text from Detective Carter. Your parents' house just went into foreclosure. They're being evicted next week. I stared at the message, remembering Sunday dinners in that house, holidays, birthdays, all built on stolen money and lies. You okay? Nathan asked when I showed him the text. I will be. I looked out my apartment window where the city stretched below, lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, my family was facing real consequences for the first time in their lives. You know what's funny? I turned to him. They always said I was the responsible one, the boring one, the one who needed to help everyone else shine. And now I'm the one with the stable job, the clean credit score, and the clear conscience. At the courthouse 6 weeks later, the courtroom felt smaller than I expected. My parents sat at the defendant's table, looking diminished in their court-appropriate clothing. Amber slouched in the gallery behind them, shooting me venomous glares. James sat separately with his own attorney, avoiding my gaze entirely. All rise. The bailiff called. Detective Carter squeezed my hand as I stood. You ready? I nodded, gripping my victim impact statement, 3 pages that had taken weeks to write, each word weighted with years of suppressed truth. The state versus James and Margaret Wilson, and James Wilson Jr. The judge began but was interrupted by a commotion at the courtroom door. My parents' lawyer rushed in, whispering urgently to them. Mom's face crumpled. Dad's shoulders slumped. Your Honor, their lawyer addressed the court. My clients wish to change their plea to guilty on all counts. Amber's gasp echoed through the courtroom. Mom. Dad. No. James looked stricken, conferring rapidly with his own attorney. The judge peered over his glasses. You understand this means no trial, no chance to present your defense? We understand, Dad said, his voice barely audible. And you, Mr. Wilson? The judge turned to James. After a whispered conversation with his lawyer, James nodded. Guilty, Your Honor. Very well. The judge shuffled papers. Before sentencing, we'll hear the victim impact statement. Ms. Wilson. I walked to the podium, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The statement trembled in my hands. Your Honor, I began. I've spent weeks trying to calculate the exact financial damage my family caused. The stolen money, the forged loans, the fraudulent accounts. But the real cost. That's harder to quantify. Mom started crying. James stared at the table. I kept going. How do you measure the cost of betrayal? Of discovering that every time your parents said, I love you, they were really saying, I love what I can take from you? How do you quantify the realization that your husband married you for your financial stability and not your heart? That's not true. Amber stood up. We're family. Miss Wilson, the judge warned. Sit down or be removed. I turned to face my family directly. You taught me that family means sacrificing everything for each other. But that was a lie. What you really taught me was that family means having convenient victims who won't press charges. Olivia, please, Mom reached out. We can still fix this. No, Mom, we can't. Because you're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. The judge cleared his throat. Given the defendant's guilty pleas and the extent of their crimes, I'm prepared to deliver sentencing. Wait. Dad stood up. Your Honor, please. We did it for our daughter. Which one? I asked quietly. The one you stole from or the one you stole for? The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Mr. Wilson, sit down. Based on the severity and duration of these crimes, I sentence you and Mrs. Wilson to 3 years in state prison with possibility of parole after 18 months. Mr. Wilson Jr., I sentence you to 2 years with possibility of parole after 12 months. Additionally, you'll all pay full restitution to the victim. Amber burst into tears. This is all your fault, she screamed at me. I hate you. Miss Wilson, the judge addressed Amber. Your separate trial for fraud and identity theft begins next week. I suggest you save your outburst for then. Outside the courtroom, reporters clustered with cameras and microphones. Rachel and Nathan flanked me like bodyguards. Ms. Wilson, how does it feel sending your parents and husband to prison? I didn't send them anywhere, I said clearly. Their choices did. Olivia. Mom called as officers led them past. We did everything for you. No, Mom, you did everything to me. There's a difference. Amber tried to rush at me, but was held back by their lawyer. You're dead to me, she shrieked. Dead. Funny, I replied. I've never felt more alive. Detective Carter appeared with a protective detail. Let's get you out of here. Your sister's getting unstable. In the parking lot, Nathan opened his car door for me. Want to get a drink? Actually, I pulled out my phone showing him an email. I have a house closing to get to now. Rachel perked up. The one we looked at last week? You got it. I smiled. Turns out karma has good timing. My family loses their freedom the same day I gain mine. Olivia. Amber's voice rang across the parking lot. She'd broken away from the lawyer. You can't do this. Where are mom and dad supposed to live when they get out? Not my problem, I called back. Try getting a job instead of a handout. I heard Walmart's hiring. As we drove away, I watched in the rearview mirror as officers led my parents and James to the prison transport van. Amber stood alone on the courthouse steps, mascara running, screaming into her phone. You okay? Nathan asked softly. I thought about the house waiting for me, about my promotion, about the weight lifting from my shoulders with each mile we drove. You know what? I said, for the first time in my life, I actually am. He smiled. Because we've got a closing to get to. Ready to start your new life? I looked ahead at the road stretching before us, clear and bright. More than ready. Let's go home. Epilogue of my new home, last box. Nathan announced, setting it down in my new kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the bay windows, catching the granite countertops I'd fallen in love with during the viewing. I still can't believe this is mine. I ran my hand along the smooth surface. All mine. Better believe it. Rachel burst through the door with champagne. Because this calls for a celebration. First night in your new house. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Amber's sentencing had finished. I clicked the link. Local woman gets 2 years for identity theft. Amber Wilson, 29, was sentenced today for multiple counts of fraud. Don't. Rachel grabbed my phone. This is your moment. No family drama allowed. The doorbell rang. Detective Carter stood on my porch holding a folder. Sorry to interrupt your moving day, she said, stepping inside. But I thought you'd want to see this. Your parents tried to file an appeal. It was denied. Of course they did. I accepted the folder. Let me guess, they claimed they were just trying to help their children? Actually, they tried to blame you. Said you gave them permission for everything. She smiled. The judge wasn't impressed. Speaking of not impressed, Nathan called from my laptop. You might want to see this. He pulled up a social media post from one of my cousins. Family isn't family anymore. Olivia put her parents in jail and now she's buying a fancy house with blood money. Karma will get her. Blood money? I laughed. You mean my own savings they didn't manage to steal? Want me to respond? Rachel cracked her knuckles over the keyboard. No need. I started unpacking a box. They can keep their social media circus. I've got better things to do, like planning your housewarming party. Rachel pulled out a design magazine. Because this place has serious entertainment potential. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Michael. Hope I'm not interrupting, he said, holding up a bottle of wine. But I brought a housewarming gift and news. Good news or bad news first? Let's start with the good, I said, taking the wine. The board was impressed with how you handled the fraud case. They're offering you a promotion. Senior risk analyst. I blinked. What? You spotted financial fraud in your own family and had the courage to report it. That's exactly the kind of integrity we need in risk management. He smiled. The bad news is, you'll have to deal with a bigger office and a 30% raise. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Rachel urged. After everything you've been through, you deserve this. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number, but I recognized the prison's area code. Olivia? Mom's voice was thin. Please don't hang up. I need you to know I'm sorry. Are you sorry for what you did or sorry you got caught? Silence. That's what I thought. I kept my voice steady. Goodbye, Mom. Wait, your father and I will have nowhere to go when we get out. Amber's obviously not in a position to help. You're right. She's not. Because you taught her that taking is easier than earning. I looked around my new kitchen at my friends unpacking boxes and opening wine. But you taught me something too. You taught me exactly who not to be. I hung up before she could respond. You okay? Nathan asked softly. Better than okay. I grabbed wine glasses from a box. I'm free. Flashback childhood. I was 12 when I first realized my family wasn't like others. It was a Tuesday morning, and Mom had one of her headaches again. Dad had already left for work. Olivia, Mom called weakly from her darkened bedroom. Can you get your sister ready for school? I just can't manage today. I remember standing in Amber's room, trying to wrestle her into clothes while she screamed about wanting a different outfit. But Mommy always lets me wear what I want. 7-year-old Amber had wailed. Well, Mommy's not feeling well, I'd said, forcing a brush through her tangled hair. Later that day, my teacher, Mrs. Bennett, had kept me after class. Is everything okay at home, Olivia? She'd asked gently. Yes, ma'am, I'd answered automatically. You seem very tired lately, and you're always taking care of your sister. That's a lot of responsibility for someone your age. I remember the strange feeling in my chest, pride mixed with resentment. Someone has to do it, I'd said. That night, I'd overheard my parents talking. Margaret called today, Mom had said. She invited us to their lake house this weekend. We can't afford that, Dad had replied. I know, but Amber would love it. Maybe we could use some of that money your mother sent for Olivia's science camp tuition? Liv won't mind. She's so practical, always saving rather than enjoying life. Besides, she's got years to go to science camp. I never did go to science camp, or space camp the next year, or the academic decathlon when I was 16. But Amber went to dance camp, beauty pageants, and spring break in Canson. It's just how it is, I'd tell myself. Amber needs these experiences to build her confidence. I'm already confident. The lie had comforted me for 22 years. Until now. At my new home present day, to freedom. Rachel raised her glass. And to karma finally doing its job. Nathan added. Detective Carter checked her phone. Speaking of karma, Amber's being transferred to state prison tomorrow. Want me to keep you updated? No, I said firmly. I don't need to know what happens to them anymore. Their story isn't my story. Then what is your story? Nathan asked, helping me unpack dishes. I looked around my new kitchen at the sunlight painting warm patterns on walls that were truly mine, at friends who supported me through everything, at a career that rewarded integrity instead of manipulation. My story, I smiled. My story is just beginning. And this time, I'm writing it myself. Well then, Rachel raised her glass again. To new beginnings and to Olivia, the woman who proved that sometimes the best revenge is living well. And paying attention to your bank statements, Detective Carter added with a wink. We laughed, the sound echoing through my new home, my real home, built on truth instead of lies, strength instead of manipulation, independence instead of guilt. Outside, a moving truck drove past carrying my parents' repossessed furniture to auction, but I didn't watch it go. I was too busy planning where to hang my art, choosing paint colors, making this space mine. They say home is where the heart is, but sometimes home is where you finally set your heart free. So, Rachel pulled out her tablet about that housewarming party. I grinned. Show me what you're thinking. This time, every decision would be mine. Every choice would be clear. Every dollar would be earned. And it felt absolutely perfect. Nathan lingered after the others had gone, helping me arrange furniture in the living room. We'd worked in comfortable silence for nearly an hour when he finally spoke. I've been wanting to tell you something for a while, he said, setting down a box of books. But it never seemed like the right time. I looked up, curious. What is it? I'm really proud of you, Liv. His eyes met mine. Do you have any idea how rare it is for someone to break free from a lifetime of financial abuse? Most people never find the courage. I felt my cheeks warm. I didn't have much choice. They took my house down payment. That was just the final straw. But you've been carrying them for decades. He moved closer. You could have covered for them again, taken out another loan, worked more overtime. That's what the old Olivia would have done. The truth of his words settled over me. He was right. 6 months ago, I would have found a way to fix everything, to keep the peace, to be the responsible one. What changed? He asked softly. I thought about it as I arranged books on the shelf. I guess I finally realized that being responsible for myself isn't the same as being responsible for everyone else. That I matter too. Nathan smiled. You've always mattered. I'm just glad you finally see it. Later, as we sat on my new porch watching the sunset, I felt something unfamiliar, a lightness, as if gravity had suddenly decreased. It took me a moment to recognize it as peace. My phone pinged with an email alert, the final paperwork for my promotion. Senior Risk Analyst Olivia Wilson. I smiled at the title. What are you thinking about? Nathan asked. The future, I said. For the first time in my life, it feels like it actually belongs to me. He reached over and squeezed my hand. It does. And it's going to be amazing. I believed him. After all, I'd already survived the worst. My family had taken my money, my trust, and my past, but they couldn't take my future. That belonged to me alone. And as the sun set on my first day of true independence, I knew with absolute certainty that I was finally, truly home.